Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. The issue, I think, the number one issue this week is going back to school, and whether parents, whether teachers, whether kids feel comfortable going back to school. So I've got Gail Bannister, who is the president of the Peel Elementary School Teachers Local. She's with the Peel Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario, but she's the president of the Peel chapter, is with me today to chat about that. Gail, welcome to our show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So I guess off the top, what do you think? Should we go back to school?
I think that we need to go back to school. I think that that is what's best for students' mental health, as well as our teachers' mental health. But at this time, I think that we need to delay that entry just so that we can ensure that we are creating a safe working environment and a safe learning environment for our students.
And delay to do what? To go to half the number of students per class, to add in more HVAC, to wait for a vaccine, to what?
Well, all of the above. I think at this time what we need to do is ensure that the safety measures that we've been hearing about for a few months now are in place. And that would involve socially distancing and ensuring that we have space in our classrooms to do that. And, as you mentioned, in order to do that, we would need to lower class sizes. We also have ventilation issues in our schools. Many of our schools need repairs, and we need an opportunity to have them be fixed. So, if we gave more time, then we could create a plan that would be safe for everyone.
Could we ever afford having class sizes of 10, 15 kids per class?
It's a huge cost, but yes, I think that our students are worth it. Our lives are worth it. So we would definitely need to make that happen.
Now, some schools are going to half days, every second day on, and half the time you stay at home. You had your experience with virtual learning back in the spring. What do you think of that idea?
Well, it's challenging. The online school was challenging, but it was an emergency situation at the time. So certainly we've had some time to create a better system to ensure that everyone has the equipment that they need. But even in that case, we haven't really had enough time to create lessons. In high school, they have created that, but in elementary, we haven't had the opportunity to do that. So that's another reason to delay the entry, so that we can ensure that we have time to create lessons that can be used online. We can also ensure that all students have the equipment that they need. We gave equipment out during the emergency distance learning that we did in the spring, but in some homes, there are multiple children using one device. And we also had parents using that same device. So, obviously that would create its challenges. So if we had opportunity as well to provide more technology for students, for homes, then that would be best.
So we've heard in Toronto a little bit about how public health in Toronto has objected to some of the plans that the Toronto School Board had to go back to education. What's been the status in Peel? Has Peel Health got involved in the process? What do you think the status is of your reopening?
Mm-hmm. Well, Peel Health has been involved, and the board has been conferring with them. We heard when Toronto Health said that we needed more physical distancing in the classroom. We heard Peel saying the exact same thing. They said that we needed to have 2 meters of space in between students. And they talked about ventilation. They talked about hand washing and sanitizing. We actually wrote to Peel Health, and they wrote back to us, which was great. But they have approved the plan that the Peel board has. And it's not in line with what they originally said. So, I do have some questions around that. We've seen that even with the announcements of the Ford government, where we have medical personnel now saying that 1 meter of distance is safe. Whereas, we've heard for a few months now that we need 2 meters. So what they're saying has shifted, and they are approving the plan that the appeal board has put forward.
And so what is the current plan?
The current plan is there has been a reduction in class size. So we have a maximum of, say, 27 students in our grade 4 to 8 classes, for example. So really we're not seeing a lot of changes in terms of class
Sorry,
size.
a maximum of 27? Is that pre-COVID or post-COVID?
That's post-COVID.
You're kidding.
So,
27?
I'm not kidding, because we have averages. So what they have done is they have hired additional 200 staff, 200 teachers to lower class size, but it's the average that's been lowered. So in our kindergarten classrooms, that average has been lowered by about 5 students. But
From what to what?
From in kindergarten, we had, let me make sure I get it right. So in kindergarten, we'll have 26, and it's gone down to 20.
20. There's no way that 20 kids, 20 nursery school age kids in a classroom are going to be able to stay a foot apart, let alone a meter apart, let alone 2 meters apart. Anyway, we are chatting today with someone from the Teachers Union, the Peel Elementary School Teachers Local, part of the Elementary School Teachers Federation of Ontario. Gail Bannister, we're going to take a break for some messages and come back talking about reopening of schools in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Gail Bannister. She is with the Teachers Union. Specifically, she is president of the Peel Elementary School Teachers Local, part of the Elementary School Teachers Federation of Ontario. Gail, just a little bit of background. Tell me, are you a teacher?
I am a teacher. So
what did you teach?
I am an intermediate school teacher, but I've taught from grades 3 to grade 8, primarily taught math and science in the intermediate division.
And how long have you been a teacher, and how long have you been president of the union?
I've been a teacher for 15 years, and this is I'm going into my 2nd year as president. I've been vice president, though, for 5 years before becoming president.
What motivated you to get involved in the union?
Activism and fairness and equity and all of those good things. So really I had an negative experience with my principal where I didn't understand my rights, and I felt quite fearful, and I realized I needed to learn some more. I needed to know what my rights were and my obligations were, and I needed to ensure that other people knew that as well. So I then became the school steward, and from then I just continued to be active in the union.
So I don't have school-age kids now, at least elementary school, that's for sure. But I haven't had that experience during the pandemic, but I got to tell you, if I had asked my kids to keep a mask on all day, it's not happening. There's no way. Is it possible to have kids keep a mask on all day?
It's really challenging. I mean, I do it now in meetings. I was in a meeting on Tuesday and I was wearing a mask for the better part of the day.
You and me is one state, but we're talking about children in elementary school.
Yes. No, it's really challenging. And I'm not sure it's going to work. I'm not sure that kids are going to keep the mask on. I've heard many parents say that they've already been practicing with their children, at home. And, if they go out, they're wearing a mask. If they have different play groups, they've been wearing a mask. So I've heard parents say that they are practicing, with their little ones. But schools are different areas, right? They're not air conditioned. So, that's going to create, I think, another issue for children because they're going to get hot. We can't use fans because they're talking about the air dispersing COVID around and that being a challenge. So I'm not sure how it's going to work. I think children are going to be quite uncomfortable, but we've also heard that is definitely one way to ensure that the virus doesn't spread is by keeping a mask on. and we're unable to have the physical distance that's necessary. So we definitely need to have students wearing a mask. And I'm glad that now the board has implemented that all children from grades 1 to 12 will be wearing a mask. It's voluntary for kindergarten children, but they are encouraging kindergarten children to wear them as well.
Now, what happens if someone shows up without a mask?
They will be given a mask.
So you'll be supplying masks for people that don't show up with one?
There are masks that are provided in the schools, but parents have been told that all children in grades 1 to 12 need to come prepared with a mask.
And what's going to happen with recess and lunch and physical education time period?
When they're outside for recess, they won't have to wear a mask, and that is concerning because it will be very challenging to keep any sort of physical distance between students, even if they're outside, and they won't be wearing a mask. I suppose it feels a little safer because you're outside, so there's more air circulation for sure. But it will be challenging. Management as a whole will be challenging. We will begin the school year introducing students to numerous new policies and procedures. How to enter the building safely, creating a staggered entry system. It will be very challenging. There's a lot for students to learn. There's a lot for the adults in the building as well to learn to have this work.
So in the United States, we've undoubtedly heard about some of the, I'm not sure if it's elementary schools, but I've heard about high schools and colleges that opened up mid-August the way that they do in the southern United States. And some have had to close down already because of dramatic increases in the virus. What is the plan if you get an infection? What happens?
So if someone gets infected with the virus, the board will be contacting Peel Health, and Peel Health has outlined procedure. You, as a teacher, you will not know if someone in your classroom has contacted the virus, but Peel Health will send letters home to everyone if you have come into contact. So it may be in your classroom, it may be that you've been outside at the same time, and Peel Health has established that you may have come in contact with someone with the virus. The Peel Health will be deciding if they shut down a classroom or a school, depending on the situation. So some of those questions are still up in the air, and we're uncertain how it will unfold. Already it's been in the news this week that a staff member, has contacted the virus in one of our Peel schools. And they've gone through a process of deep cleaning. They have sent letters out to anyone who may have come in contact with this individual, but we don't know if it's a teacher or, who the individual was. But they are still planning on reopening as scheduled.
So, you undoubtedly are as aware of some of the statistics as I am. The chance for mortality for a young person is very low. The chance for mortality for someone that's sort of, over the age of 50 or 60 increases reasonably dramatically. The chance for someone that is over 80 is extreme. So the biggest risk is, frankly, some child getting infected, going home and seeing grandma or grandpa and infecting them. But teachers have got to be at risk as well. And, in long-term care facilities, it wasn't different residents transmitting the virus to each other. It was the personal care workers that were going from room to room that were transmitting the virus, which would be, sort of the equivalent of teachers. Aren't teachers worried?
Teachers are very worried because they're going to be, in a classroom with many students, and there won't be any real physical distancing. And our teachers who have to go room to room because students will not be moving. So, normally students move, they may go to phys ed class, they may go to a French class, and they will have one teacher who teaches them primarily for the entire day, but they do the moving. But now it will be teachers who will be doing the moving. So you do have French teachers, for example, who will be going into 6 different classrooms. So they will be exposed to six different classrooms full of students.
And if the
And
average
that's
size
scary.
is 20, that's 120 people a day.
That's quite a bit, right? And really, you're in contact then with whoever's in their bubble, right? Like that child's bubble as well. So it's very concerning for teachers. And at this point, there's really been no concern from the labor board, for example, of the workers' safety. They have put measures in for students in terms of lowering class sizes, even though not by much, and ensuring that students aren't moving from classroom to classroom. Those sorts of things have been put in place, a plan for all students to enter the building. Extra hand washing times will be built into their day. So there are plans being made for students, but there aren't any safety measures that are really being made for the workers in the building.
So what are the rights for teachers if they just decide that for concerns over their own public health, or maybe they're living with a parent that is elderly, and if they've got concerns for that individual, do they have the right to not show up to work?
So there are some rights, but it's limited. So teachers were able to apply for accommodations if they had medical underlying conditions that they felt put them at greater risk. They were able to apply for a medical accommodation, which meant that they could teach online, so they will not be in the building if they've been approved for that. There's also family status accommodations, so there were some teachers who were able to say, I have a child or a dependent care issue in terms of a parent who has underlying health conditions and can't risk that exposure. So I need to teach online. So those teachers have been accommodated in that way. Then there are also teachers who didn't have elder care issues. They didn't have underlying medical conditions. So they've taken an unpaid leave. And typically in our board, you would have to apply for that in January. So the accommodation is just that you're able to apply for it now and get that. But as you can imagine, that's really not available for all families. All families can't decide not to be paid for a year. So there are many teachers who are fearful, who feel that they are putting their lives at risk. They are asking for some more information about safety measures, asking for perhaps extra physical protective equipment, and also asking about their rights. What are their rights in terms of refusing work if they find that it's unsafe. But it's very challenging for teachers to refuse work due to safety conditions.
I think the example that you gave of the French teacher that goes around to 6 different classes, or I would have thought like a substitute teacher that might go to different classrooms on different days of the week, brings it into question even more. And then I think the other thing is most of us have been mostly worried about the respiratory disease and the impact we've heard about people getting sick, going on ventilators, et cetera. But more and more we're hearing about vascular impacts and cognitive impacts that stay with people for a long period of time, whether they got really sick and had to go to the hospital or not. They just, they may have had a fever, but they've got what they're describing as brain fog for months. And, some people are worried it might continue for a long period of time, that it actually is impacting the vascular system and via the vascular system into the brain. What do you think of that?
Well, this is the issue. We really don't know enough about this disease, really. And even when you talk about children contacting the disease, at first we heard that they won't contact it. They don't carry it. But we have heard of children perhaps being carriers. We now have heard of some children who have died from the disease. So really, enough is not known about this disease. We don't know what will happen in the long term. And, when you talk about the impact to older people, that's very interesting, because the majority of our teachers who are going to be doing the online teaching will be our younger teachers. They're the ones with the least seniority. The board chose to use seniority to put those teachers online instead of, perhaps a voluntary process where, some teachers would feel like because of their age that they're more susceptible to disease and would want to teach online. They perhaps would be the one to volunteer. But because of the process that our board used, we will have more of our older teachers in the building and therefore more susceptible to this disease.
If you had a message to any teachers that are listening tonight, what would that message be?
Well, I think that I would say to them, we still need to continue to advocate. And you need to be speaking about your working conditions with family members, with friends, ensure that everyone really understands what's happening in our schools, because, what is being put out in media is that we're fear-mongering right now, and it's really just the unions, who are making a big fuss, who aren't willing to compromise, aren't willing to really put how was it phrased? I think we need to step up or something like that, the Premier said. And so, I would tell teachers to keep advocating because we have seen that advocacy works. Teachers, educators, all those stakeholders in education, parents have been advocating for the last month, and we have seen that it has worked. We have had increased funding given by the government. Government has allowed boards to use their reserves, and, we haven't seen enough changes, but we have seen it. So I think that what we need to do is to continue to speak up, continue to actually describe our working conditions, because many people don't know what our working conditions are. They think school is like it was, when they were back in school, and it's changed quite a bit. So I think that's one thing that I would tell teachers to do, is to continue to speak up as they can.
And if you had a message for parents, what would it be?
I think parents need to continue to speak up as well. They need to ask questions, and they need to know that teachers want to return to school. Teachers will ensure that whatever safety measures have been put in our buildings, they will ensure that they're there for their children. But I think parents need to demand more. They need to demand more safety measures. They need to say, we need more physical distancing, so you need to hire more staff. They need to say to the government, our children are worth the money. They're worth the money, so spend it.
What about plexiglass partitions and things like that I've seen at different restaurants and places?
I've seen them used in classrooms in different countries. So that's something that we could implement here. Our younger children aren't even at desk. They have tables, so you can picture that. You're centimeters apart, sitting around a table. So, we need to really give some time, as I mentioned before, to really look at a solid plan and put safety measures in place. And it may be buying furniture, buying plexiglass, and hiring staff so that we could actually use. Now we have some empty classrooms in our buildings because we've had to collapse classes and put some teachers online to facilitate that. So we have some room in our buildings to spread out, but we're not going to be using those classrooms to spread out. So
I was at a jazz concert a week ago, and the singer was behind a big plexiglass screen. So maybe the teachers should all be behind plexiglass.
It's not how we teach. Teaching is such a relational sort of activity, where we walk around and we engage with the students, but we definitely need to be teaching in a different way. And teachers have been asking that. They have called in and they've asked, are they going to get something for around their desk? And the answer is no, right? We're going to get masks. And we're going to get hand sanitizer.
I think that's what you're going to get until and unless there's a breakout infection. And given the statistics in Israel and in the southern United States, I think it's only a matter of time until there is an infection breakout. I hope I'm wrong. And I hope for the kids' sake and your sake, I'm wrong. But it's one of those ironic things. If you do a really good job with what you're doing, you will have proved the government's point, not your point. And if you do a bad job and we get an infection, then you're going to prove your point. So, you're
Well,
damned if you do and you're
we're
damned
not,
if you don't.
yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, we're not trying to prove a point. We're not trying to be right, or win an argument. We're trying to ensure safety for everyone. In Peel, yesterday, we had 50% of the new cases in Ontario. That's that's huge. I don't know what the numbers are today, but I believe it was 140 yesterday, and half of those who are infected were in Peel. So I am concerned about Peel numbers, and I think that that's something else that we need to consider. Is not a plan that is across the province, but we need to look at different regions and how they're being impacted by COVID and make decisions based on that, and give funding based on that as well, not just the numbers or the size of the ward or number of students, but how many COVID cases do we have? Are we more susceptible to an outbreak here in Peel? And many of our Peel teachers and staff live outside of Peel, so they're going to be carrying that with them to where they live.
Well, it's interesting because the statistics in China is that 80% of all the infections occurred in a residence. And so someone got infected outside of the residence, but then infected everyone else in the residence. And in Toronto, the areas of highest infection rate, other than obviously in long-term care, weren't in downtown high density buildings, but were in the suburbs in high occupancy homes. And so it's when someone gets the infection and comes into a house where there's a whole bunch of people living, all those people get infected. And that's the real risk. And we've got to have that in parts of Peel, no question.
Oh, absolutely. And we have multiple families living in one dwelling in Peel, right? That's a known fact. So, definitely an outbreak is probably inevitable, sadly.
Sadly. Well, it's a strange time. I congratulate you for the work that you're doing to encourage physical distancing and some time to work on it. And probably most importantly, lower number of students per class, because I think that all the statistics I've shown is that, the farther you are away, not socially distant, but physically distant from someone, the probability goes down dramatically. And that distance that people have been focused on is far more important inside than it is outside. For some reason, obviously, when the wind is blowing and whatever's happening, the virus tends to dissipate very quickly, but inside it just sort of stays around. And all the statistics say it's prolonged exposure inside, particularly in an area that has low number of atmosphere changes per hour. So it's, old HVAC type equipment. That's where the virus is the worst. And regrettably, our long-term care institutions and our schools have some of the lowest atmosphere changes per hour HVAC systems that we got. So I'm worried. And I think that you're right to be concerned. And I think that you should be congratulated for bringing some of your concerns forward. And I hope that the government listens to you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
So that's Gail Bannister. She is president of the Peel Elementary School Teachers Local. Thank you so much, Gail, for joining us. We're going to take a break right now and come back with a teacher and find out what it's like to actually be on the front lines in a school. Thanks for joining us.